The Truth Barista is a production of High Beam Ministry and uses the imaginary Ersatz coffee shop as its platform to bring you a conversation about a plethora of scintillating topics. We don't shy away from any issue that is plaguing our culture or the church today, whether it's current cultural issues, questions about Bible verses, or even just some banter to encourage you. Dr. Jay Christensen is the Truth Barista, and he and amazing Larry Kutzler brew up highly caffeinated conversations for our day. Grab a cup of joe, pop yourself down in the booth next to us, and get ready to think. The Truth Barista is a production of High Beam Ministry, and it's listener supported. For more information about The Truth Barista, go to highbeamministry.com. Thanks for listening.
I am the Alpha and Omega. I was here before you were born, and I'll be here after you're gone. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Never, 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 never. You will have a song no matter how dark the days get, no matter how difficult it is. Even though the waves of the sea may roar, men's hearts may be failing them, the mountains may be moving, but you will have a song of praise in your heart, you who belong to God.
This is the Truth Barista Show, where we serve you the uncompromised truth.
Well, Dr. J, last week it was exciting. You got through chapter 12 of Revelation, and you had some great things to say. In fact, you said you were going to do something quirky or something like that as you open up today's program. So let's get to the quirkiness.
Okay, we're going to talk about a beast which we hear about in the Bible, and we think it's an animal. It's called Leviathan. And in Hebrew, it would be Leviathan. And Leviathan in the Bible is this, it could have been a whale, if you're talking about it literally. If you're talking about it spiritually, it could be this mythical beast representing evil, etc., etc. But Leviathan is sometimes linked to a nation. So, for example, Egypt is referred to as Leviathan, and it's this picture of this giant beast thrashing about in a marsh, and it talks about how God is going to cause the fish to stick to its scales or whatever. And that means all of these nations will align with this major evil nation called Leviathan. Okay, so let me get a little bit into this here. So Leviathan is not necessarily an animal or a person. It could be a nation. It's a beastly type of a thing. Leviathan, by the way, is sometimes used of the devil, for he is king over all the proud beasts. That's what you read in Job chapter 41. Leviathan kind of gives us the idea that it's a satanic, which means, Satan means the adversary. So something that is satanic is that which opposes God. It's adversarial. So it could be a satanic or adversarial person or nation that wallows amongst the other nations. We see this in Isaiah 27:1 and Isaiah 27:12, Ezekiel 29, 1 through 5 or 8 through 12. And it's kind of like an immense beast wallowing among the reeds on the shoreline, kind of like a hippo. Or maybe think of it in terms of a dinosaur back in the prehistoric times, okay? And so Leviathan is bent on conquering and oppressing everyone, causing other nations to submit and ally with him. This is the stick to your scales idiom that's used in Ezekiel 29:4. So Jewish writers and rabbis speak of the day when God defeats Leviathan. In other words, God's going to kill this great beast. And it's called the Feast of Leviathan, when Leviathan's evil forces will be defeated and become a feast for the birds and the wild animals. We see that in Ezekiel 39, 1 through 5, and 17 through 20. To be feasted on, by the way, by wild birds and animals, to have them feast on your carcass is a sign of God's judgment. So to put this all together, the idea of Leviathan is a nation amongst all of the nations, which cause all the nations to ally with it in a massive move against God. There will come a day when God destroys that nation and calls for the birds of the air and the beasts as judgment to feast on its remnants. We see that in Ezekiel 39 when Gog and Magog, these enemy forces, come against Israel, and Israel's God, and God says, "That's it. You've had it." And they're all destroyed. And literally the birds of the air and the animals will feast on the bodies that are laying on the ground of this opposing army. So this idea of a beast rising from the sea that we see in Revelation chapter 12 is actually a common theme that you see throughout the Bible. They call it Leviathan in places. In Daniel, let's jump to Daniel chapter 7. He says this in verse 7, "After this, while I was watching in the night visions, suddenly a fourth beast appeared." Daniel's talking about nations here. So this is a fourth nation that will arise after Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. It was frightening. It's dreadful, incredibly strong, with large iron teeth. It devoured, crushed, and trampled with its feet whatever was left. It was different from all the other beasts before it, and it had 10 horns. Biblically speaking, 10 horns means 10 kings or 10 authorities. Now, while I was considering the horns, suddenly another horn, a little one, came up amongst them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it, which means now you have 7 horns with this little horn. And suddenly in this horn, there were eyes like the eyes of a human and a mouth that was speaking arrogantly. Pictorially speaking, what he is saying is this fourth beast kingdom will rise. It will have 10 leaders. Another leader will rise up, get rid of 3 of them, leaving 7. And then this particular leader is going to stand up and he's going to speak against God. He's going to just oppose God. He is satanic. Okay. In verses 9 through 10, what do you see? Up in heaven, God says, "You know something? It's time for the Son of Man to come back to the earth and execute judgment and start my kingdom on earth." That's very similar to Daniel's statue in Daniel chapter 2, where the legs of iron, the feet of iron clay, are destroyed by a rock not made with hands, divine. And it also says in 9 and 10, the Son of Man comes, and actually in verse 13, the Son of Man comes with the cloud of heavens to execute God's judgment on this final nation and the leader. In fact, when you read on in Daniel chapter 7, Daniel goes, "Man, I'm really bummed out here, because these visions are terrifying to me." And so verse 16, "I approached one of those who were standing by, one of these spiritual beings. Could you clarify this for me?" And it says right there, "So he let me know the interpretation of these things." Verse 17, "These huge beasts, 4 in number, are 4 kings who will rise from the earth. But the holy ones of the Most High will receive the kingdom and possess it forever and ever." In other words, there are going to be these 4 dominions, but ultimately God's dominion and his people will triumph. They will outlast these kingdoms. Here it is, verse 19. "Then I wanted to be clear about the fourth beast, the one different from all the others, extremely terrifying, with iron teeth and bronze claws, devouring, crushing, and trampling with its feet whatever was left." So the image you're getting here, Amazing Larry, is this fourth kingdom is going to be nothing like any of the other kingdoms on earth. It's going to be vicious. It's going to be terrifying. It will tolerate no competition. It seeks to be the only dominion on earth. And it will not only conquer, it will destroy and utterly obliterate anything that stands in its way. Tracking with me?
Wow, I don't know if this is family friendly here, Dr. J. I mean, I'm just stupefied in sense of, wow, this is really more than what sometimes we think of it. But with technology today, anything can be done, right? Because as we have and will learn, that you can't buy or sell without the number of the beast. So, hey, that's easy to do. Anybody can cut you off by using a credit card or using an account or whatever it might be. And so that's kind of a reality. That's why I think it's worse than any nation or empire before, because it has complete control over all the people.
Right. Let's go on, because now I'm going to unveil a little bit more stuff here about it. Verse 20, "I wanted to know about the 10 horns on its head and about the other horn that came up before which 3 fell. The horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke arrogantly. It looked bigger than the others." Kind of implies it wasn't, but it just looks that way. Verse 21, "As I was watching, this horn waged war against the holy ones," meaning God's people, And I'll say Daniel's thinking the Israelites at this time, but from our perspective, it would be the Jews and the Christians, and was prevailing over them until the Ancient of Days arrived and a judgment was given in favor of the holy ones of the Most High. For the time had come and the holy ones took possession of the kingdom. In other words, there's coming a time when a final beast kingdom will arise. There will be 10 kings, 3 will be put down with 7 left, and it will be led by a leader who speaks against God. This is what he said, verse 23. The fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, different from all the other kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth, trample it down, and crush it. The 10 horns or 10 kings will arise from this kingdom. Another king, different from the previous ones, will rise after them and subdue 3 kings. Remember those numbers. He will speak words against the Most High and oppress the holy ones of the Most High. He will intend to change religious festivals, which will be the feasts of the Lord, biblically speaking, and laws. That's God's commands. And the holy ones will be handed over to him for what? A time, times, and half a time. 3.5 times. But the court, meaning the heavenly court we just read about earlier, will convene. His dominion will be taken away and destroyed forever. So why do I say all that? Okay, Daniel sees a prophetic vision of a succession of world empires centered in the Middle East. This end-time beast and his empire will cause havoc with God's people until God's agent, the Son of Man, arrives to smash that empire and destroy the beast utterly. Jesus says that will happen again. Matthew 24:15, and John expands here in Revelations 13 and following. The beast that Daniel prophesied about and Jesus referred back to as the pattern of the beast to come was a Greek military leader and king called Antiochus IV Epiphanes. He nicknamed himself Epiphanes, which means manifestation of God. In other words, he's basically saying, I'm Antiochus IV, and I'm God in the flesh. Bow down before him. And he was a very, very wicked king, to the point where when he attacked the people of Israel, the Jews that were there that had come back, he said, if you read the Torah or teach the Torah, I'll just wrap the Torah scroll around you and set it on fire. If you circumcise your boys, ladies, I'm going to kill your baby and I'm going to hang it around your neck. I mean, this guy was horrible. He went into Jerusalem, he sacrificed a pig on God's altar, and then set up a statue to Zeus in the temple. He desecrated the holy place, and he proclaims himself God. Jesus looks at what happened in history 165 years before him, and he says, guess what, boys? This is going to happen again. Okay, you have to deal with that prophetically. Jesus is not saying what Rome did in AD 70 was a fulfillment of that, because it didn't. Jesus did not return in AD 70. Jesus is pointing to the far end, just like Daniel was pointing to the far end, only he was saying, guess what? God already gave you the model back here 165 years before me. Another guy's going to come. He's going to pull the same thing. He's going to desecrate God's holy place. He's going to proclaim himself as God. He's going to go after God's people, and he's going to oppose God's plan. There it is. And it's right there in Daniel. And Daniel expands on it later. So that's kind of what we're sitting on right here in chapter 13. Antiochus IV is going to be the Antichrist of the future. There you go.
Wow. That's a great history lesson. And oftentimes we don't hear much of that. You know, we don't hear the history part that ties in as you've outlined. It's great information. Thank you for that.
And this is why people need to understand the Bible. And let's talk about this a little bit to encourage people, Amazing Larry, because, you know, right now, in order to understand the stuff, you have to have the broad view of Scripture. You have to know the whole Bible from front to back, which is why I encourage people, read through the Bible. It's why I wrote Cruising Through the Bible, was to give people a means to read through the Bible in 2, 3, 4 chapter chunks, very easy to do over a cup of coffee. And then I gave them a running commentary to help them understand what they read, so that you can sit there like you and I are doing and say, well, these end time events, is there anything that can give us more insight? Well, yeah, Daniel and Jesus, they give us plenty of end time insights. And by the way, so does Paul. So does Peter. So you have to know the stuff. Now, you were interviewing a person, weren't you, about the Bible?
I was, and we looked at all kinds of things, and one was a survey that was done in 2021, but it said that only 10%, actually 11% of Americans read their Bible on a weekly basis. 11%. And sometimes when I drive by church parking lots on Sunday morning going to church, I see every parking lot full. But I wonder how many of those people attending church actually read the Bible. And as we get into the chapter 13 and we see the Antichrist, and we know that John said that the Antichrist is already with us. It's already among us. And we see that every day when we read the news or see the news. But it went on to say that the survey says that under 30, only 1%, Dr. J, only 1% have a biblical worldview and read their Bible. It increases to 3% among people in their 30s and 40s, and it goes up to 5% among people aged 50 to 65. And get this, it peaks with people to 8% over 65. And I'm thinking to myself, we haven't cracked the 10% barrier yet. And we're talking about the world coming to a conclusion in the way that you're describing it in the book of Revelation as John wrote it. And I'm going, what? What's going on here? I mean, we're not going to be prepared. We're going to be sucked into the deception. And I think that's a shame. And I said to this person, I've heard this before from others, so it's not original with me, but I do think, Dr. J, we need a new reformation. Like Amos said in 8:11, that there's going to be a famine of the Word of God. I think we've got a famine right now, buddy. That's why we're here. That's why we're on the air and why we're doing the podcast on the internet and all of that stuff and the cruising through the Bible. We're trying to get people excited to get back into the Word because that's our future. That's the substance for us to stand our ground in a day where there's unfaithfulness and there's no hope and there's just plain old evil.
Exactly. And, one way to look at this too is, if people don't understand the Bible, they're going to fall into today, you heard in recent months, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Well, the reason they're saying that is, number one, they don't understand history. There never was a state of Palestine, only a region referred to as Palestine, and it included both Jews and Arabs. Number two, they don't understand biblically that God gave the Jews the land, and it explains why the Jews came back to the land in 48 and why they took the city in Jerusalem in 67. And so everybody, you have Christians who are calling Israel colonizers. They have no idea that it was God who colonized that land with the Jewish people. So, like you said, they don't have the biblical mindset. So let's get into the Word. And let's see what happens here. So, diving into Revelation chapter 13. Now, based on everything I've said, see if there are things that sound familiar. Verse 1, and I saw a beast coming up out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads.
Is Daniel writing this? What's up with this?
Exactly. That's Daniel 7:3 is the beast coming out of the sea. Daniel 7:7, 10 horns. Daniel 7:8, that's the 7 heads. 10 horns minus 3 uprooted is 7 left. And at Daniel 7:20, it says that this beast will prevail against God's people. And it's the last kingdom to come, verses 23 through 27. So what John is saying, 20 years after Rome attacked Jerusalem, he's going, guess what? That's going to happen at the end. Okay, moving on. He starts describing this. On its horns were 10 crowns, and on its heads were blasphemous names, which in other words, it means these leaders will by nature oppose God. Verse 2, the beast I saw was like a leopard, its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. The dragon gave the beast his power, his throne, and great authority. Very interesting here. If you want to draw an unholy equivalent, Satan is like the Father. As the Father gave authority, power, and a throne, dominion to Jesus, so Satan is going to give power, a throne, and authority to the Antichrist, the one who opposes Jesus. He is the mirror image of Jesus. One of his head appeared to be fatally wounded, but its fatal wound was healed. Now, there's a lot of speculation. Is that the kingdom gets a fatal wound and then it comes back to life? Is it a person? Is it one of the leaders? I'm going to leave that question open for now. I'm going to let other people debate that question. Well, let me put it this way. My feeling is it's the empire dies and rises again. Its authority dies and rises again. Could be a revived Roman Empire like you think. It could be a revived Islamic empire like I think. I'll let you know when we get there. Okay. What? Who are you laughing at?
Oh, I just love your saying. I love it. Well, I'll let you know. I want to just say one thing. When you talk about these animals, because that's how, John is seeing them and he's describing this stuff. I mean, a leopard is fast. And you know as well as I do, when things happen in the world, it can happen like overnight, like the pandemic recently. Boom, it was happened like a leopard. The bear has that power, that crushing power with the paws. And then, of course, the lion eats things, devours things quickly. So even though that he's using animals, if you look at the characteristics of the animals, you begin to say, hey, that's a very overpowering, consuming kind of spirit that's going to take over.
Right. And you are thinking very Hebraically. Congratulations. You are a good disciple.
Do I get a certificate, like a Hebraic?
That's right. I'll send you one in the mail. It would be an official Truth Barista certificate here. That's right. But you're right. It's what are the characteristics of this that tells us what it's about. Now, this is why I kind of lean toward the Islamic thing rather than Roman. See, because when the Romans came in, you didn't want to stand against their army. But once the army defeated you, Rome embraced you. You could still follow your gods. All you had to do was follow their god. Burn a pinch of incense to the emperor. Hey, everything's cool, right? If not, okay, you're going to be punished. But Rome's mission was not to destroy everything. It was to incorporate everything. In fact, they brought in a bunch of enlisted people from the Arab nations, the Syrian nations. They kept the Italians in Rome and in Italy because that was closer to the emperor, the Praetorian Guards, etc. But they used conscripts from around the Roman Empire to fight the battles. On the other hand, when you look at Islam, what's Islam's creed? Islam's creed is absolute submission. There is only one God, it's Allah. There will be no other gods. It's Allah or you're done. Number two, it's the Prophet or you're done. It's total submission to the Quran or you're done. And throughout the history of Islam, you had three choices when Islam came into town. You could either convert, you could pay a protection tax called the jizya tax, and that allowed you to live as a second-class citizen, a dhimmi, but you wouldn't be punished. Now, you would be persecuted, you would be made a second-class citizen, but you wouldn't die. The third option is you die. So that's it. So really, when Islam comes in historically, there was no room for anything else. It crushed, it destroyed. Its purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy unless you submit. That's why I think Islam fits the pattern just a little bit better of this nation. So moving along, verse 3, we talked about the heads fatally wounded, but its fatal wound was healed. The whole earth was amazed and followed the beast. There's something about its authority and power that holds many people in the world spellbound. Oh my gosh, they worshiped the dragon because he gave authority to the beast. So in other words, by giving worship to this empire, by swearing allegiance to this empire, in essence, they're swearing allegiance to Satan, who empowers and gives authority to this particular beastly nation. Listen what they say. And they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to wage war against it? Now, this is what they were saying about Islam when it erupted out of the Saudi Arabian Peninsula in the 600s. It came to the gates of Vienna. It nearly conquered Europe. It spread across North Africa. It went into Asia. It was seriously threatening the entire continent of Europe. And the word was, who can stand against this beast? Who can wage war against it? Well, thankfully, we were able to push back Islam. But still, even today, when Islam is on the move, it just wipes out territories like, for example, like ISIS did and its representatives. So, verse 5, the beast was given a mouth to utter boasts and blasphemies. To blasphemy means to speak injuriously of something. So this beast and its empire, the beastly empire, speaks against God, saying ungodly things. Okay, one of the things that Joel Richardson points out in his book, The Islamic Antichrist, and his other book, Mideast Beasts, is that Islam's end-time theology, actually theology about God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, says God is nobody's father. He has no son. So that is speaking to the very core of God's purpose and being. Islam speaks injuriously of that. And okay, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
I know you want to keep going, but time is our worst enemy here on radio, and so we want to be able
darn
to. Yeah, I know, but I think we need to bring it to a conclusion today, and we want to just give people another chance to understand more of the Bible through things that you have written and things that we offer on the internet. So next time we're going to get into how this beast conquers all of God's people. That's what it says, and I've got lots of questions on that one, but we'll have to wait till next week. But in the meantime, how do people learn more about you and about the ministry, High Beam Ministry? What are some of the resources we have for them so they can continue to understand the scriptures as we're outlaying them?
Okay. One of the best resources you can go to, again, we've mentioned this before, is Cruising Through the Bible. And it's a 1-year Through the Bible reading plan. And some of this material that I'm sharing here is in the last book of Cruising Through the Bible. It's the December book because it covers the time period, including the Revelation. So if you're looking for further information, man, go to the website, get the reading plan, and at least check out December's book. But I would encourage you, go January through December. You'll get an overview of the Bible. Granted, you're also going to get my perspective on it, and I would encourage you, get other perspectives and compare them and see how they go. I may be off the mark on a few things. They may be off the mark on a few things, but generally we all flow in the same direction. So get to the books, read through your Bible. Also, if you want, material that we talked about previous that leads up to this section, check out the podcast page. We post all of the programs that have been on the air, and we put them on the podcast page. So go there and check them out. Also, subscribe if you would, because when new material is posted, you'll be notified, especially the blog articles. And finally, there's this little button there called Donate. We may be on the air, but we don't live on air, okay? We need your help to pay the bills at the radio stations and to support the website and all these things. So please, find that donate button, give us your generous gift. We deeply appreciate anything that you contribute. And one of the things I want you to do, please, pray for High Beam Ministry, pray for myself and Amazing Larry, and that we would continue to expand our reach and that people would respond and get into God's Word.
The late David Wilkerson once said that the end of days would bring no distinction between light and darkness. This new hue would be a gray of compromise and tolerance. The gospel of Jesus Christ does not compromise to become gray, but is distinctive in telling the truth. To follow Jesus means your message is narrow, and it stands alone among the ideas found in our world.
Do you want the truth today? Dr. Jay Christensen is the Truth Barista and the founder of High Beam Ministry. Jay is a creative person who wants to use the setting of an imaginary cafe to produce a series of radio and internet programs that confront the issues of our day through the lens of the Bible. The Truth Barista was the avenue that was developed to communicate truth using the Bible as the source of our information. The Truth Barista is a production of High Beam Ministry and can be found online at highbeamministry.com.